It's not always only about specs, and we know that, but we have a hot powerhouse Android, the Sony Xperia Z1, and we have a mid-ranger Windows phone, the Lumia 925. Of course, it's only a mid-ranger if you compare it to an Android phone. So, how do these two compare? Let's check it out in this video right now. After comparing the Sony Xperia Z1 with two of the leading Android smartphones, the Samsung Galaxy S4 and the HTC One, we decided not to neglect the Windows Phone fans out there. Whether they want to switch to the Xperia Z1 from the Lumia 925, or some of you want to decide between getting one of these two devices, this is for your, and not only, viewing pleasure. Yes, we know the difference is oftentimes huge between Android and Windows Phone, just like in the case of Android and iOS, or iOS and Windows Phone. But that makes it even more fun, interesting, and intriguing. We love diversity. On the other hand, there are also similarities. So, which one comes out on top? In our by now familiar setup, we'll be comparing these two phones in terms of hardware, software and user experience, as well as the camera. The Sony Xperia Z1 uses a single-piece aluminum frame construction sandwiched between two layers of tempered glass. As we concluded in our recent Z1 vs HTC One video, it is a phone which is a pleasure to hold. It also comes very close, if not equals, the premium, exceptional in-hand feel of the One. The Xperia Z1 is a jewel. When you add water and dustproofing to all of that, and we need to remind you, it is rated for depths beyond 1.5 meters of fresh water, you get a phone which is hard to resist. On the other hand, it is our belief that the Nokia Lumia 925 is the best of all Nokia devices when it comes to in-hand feel. Sure, it's not completely made out of aluminum and glass, as we all expected before its announcement in London, but it sure feels, to us, as the most premium of all Nokia Windows phones. If the Z1 has glass on the back, glass on the front, and aluminum in between, the Lumia 925 has a curve towards the edges glass on the front, which blends in nicely with the sides, aluminum edges, and one of the softest polycarbonates which we have ever touched on the back. Interestingly, Sony did not need a protrusion for its 20.7 megapixel camera on the back of the Z1, but Nokia needed to create a hump for its 8.7 megapixel PureView shooter. However, it doesn't really bother us. Despite being significantly larger than the 925, the Z1 is just as thin, at 8.5mm. It is, however, 15mm taller at 144mm and 4.6mm wider at 74mm. It is also 31 grams heavier due to its size and glass construction at 170 grams. Again, we can't stress this enough. We have all sorts of IP ratings on the Z1, but, in layman's terms, it is dustproof and waterproof beyond 1.5 meters of fresh water. That alone can win the game if you are looking for something like this. On the inside, these two couldn't be any more different. However, there is also a fundamental difference between the two platforms, which justifies hardware specification differences. The Xperia Z1 is powered by a 2.2 GHz quad-core Qualcomm Snapdragon 800 processor. The Lumia 925 has a dual-core 1.5 GHz Qualcomm Snapdragon S4 at its core. RAM goes to the Z1 and is 2 GB versus half of that on the Lumia 925. However, internal storage-wise, the Xperia Z1 only has 16 GB on board, expandable via microSD, while the 925 comes in at 16 and sometimes 32 GB options, both of which are sadly non-expandable. The display battle also goes to the Xperia Z1, regardless if you look at size or resolution. We have 5 inches against 4.5 inches, Full HD 1920 by 1080 versus 720p 1280 by 768 resolution, 441 ppi versus 334 ppi. And then there are the differences in technologies. There's a TFT display on the Sony phone with the company's own triluminous technology from TVs together with X-Reality Engine, and there's a clear black AMOLED PureMotion HD unit on the Nokia phone. Comparing the two is difficult due to the different UI layouts, but resolution aside, as far as image quality, contrast, color vibrancy, saturation, and everything else is concerned, we'll have to give it to the Lumia 925 and its deep blacks, natural color tones, and the user's ability to customize the color profile in terms of temperature and saturation. Side angle visibility also matters to us. We understand that it might not matter to some of you, but the Lumia 925, we emphasize, resolution aside, wins the battle. On paper, the 20.7 megapixel stabilized camera on the Z1 destroys the 8.7 megapixel PureView stabilized camera on the 925, if you look at sheer numbers. Sensors aside, it's G-Lens versus Carl Zeiss lens, Bions and Exmor RS technologies versus PureView. We'll see how they actually compare later on in this video. Sony fitted a larger battery on the Z1 to power everything. We're looking at 3000 mAh on the Z1 versus 2000 mAh on the 925. Sadly, neither of the two are user removable or accessible. Neither supports wireless charging out of the box. On the software side, we've got Android 4.2.2 Jelly Bean on the Z1, and we've got Windows Phone 8 Nokia Lumia Ember Edition on the 925. It couldn't be any more different. And, while this is not another Android versus Windows Phone video, we'll tell you that both deliver a solid user experience. However, those who love customization and a basically endless choice of software titles will tend to go the Android way. On Windows Phone, the UI is minimalistic, fresh, different, but there are some applications still missing in the store. While you might find most of the applications, there are a couple of exceptions which might simply not be there at the time of recording this video. However, chances are that once you go Windows Phone, you'll adopt the Microsoft ecosystem and offerings like the Office, OneNote, SkyDrive, and Outlook suite, against Gmail and all the other Google services. While the entire user experience on the Z1 is as fluid as it can get, thanks in part to the fast processor, plenty of RAM, and the OS itself, Windows Phone on the Lumia 925 has never felt better. It is an OS which is, by design, snappy, responsive, and buttery smooth. There are certain things, though, on the software end, that can tip the balance in favor of the Nokia phone. The entire free Hirsute, with online as well as offline voice-guided navigation, the Nokia ProCam app, Nokia Music, and all the others. On the other hand, Google Maps is the go-to source of many for mapping solutions, and you can also make them available offline. Navigation, however, will most of the times require a data connection. Sony also bundles its own offerings for music and games. The rest is the same, meaning it's as different as it can get on the two phones. Multiple home screens and widgets versus scrolling lists of live tiles, panoramic hubs, and a UI that was once called Metro for a reason. Lots of notifications in the queue versus those notifications which, at the moment, disappear, but some of them could be retained on live tiles, and a general feeling of tweakability versus options to change wallpaper, background, accent, and tile sizes. If customization is your cup of tea, the Z1 wins. If, on the other hand, you're looking for something different and fresh, the 925 and Windows Phone bring that to you. Let us move on to the camera. While we talk about it, we'll play the samples for you in the background. We had a hard time deciding and coming up with a winner here. The Z1 has a 20.7 megapixel camera, but you can't really shoot in that mode, except if you specifically enable it in the manual settings and disable all other scene modes. In that mode you can also only tweak white balance and exposure. For everything else, your output will be 8 megapixels, like on the Lumia. Windows Phone's default camera doesn't really allow you to do anything. Nokia's own ProCam app, available on the 925, can be set as the default camera application and allows you to tweak everything you can think of, and even more. The Lumia 925 wins, but not by a large margin though. In our opinion, this is the closest camera shootout we've done in a long time. Before we tell you more, we have to mention this. They're both good shooters. However, the Lumia 925 has a slight edge when it comes to anything that is not shot or captured under perfect lighting conditions, where the Z1 wins. And, since those conditions are probably the rarest of what you'll encounter, the rest makes the difference. The Z1 tends to introduce more noise in the images, in all images, except those shot in the aforementioned perfect lighting conditions. The 925 does a better job as far as noise, or concealing noise, is concerned. Also, the 925 delivers more details throughout the frame, while the Z1 shots tend to wash out, get blurry towards the edges, and this is not depth of field. And also, this is something which is present on most of the shots, especially in the far right edges. As far as color reproduction is concerned, you have to take our word for it. The Lumia 925 is the closest to what we've seen ourselves when shooting these stills and videos. Under low light circumstances, the Z1 bumps its sensitivity and captures enough light to produce images that represent your subject, however, with a lack of detail. The 925 captures more detail, but less light, in auto mode, but once you go into the manual mode of the ProCam and set shutter speed to anywhere between half a second and a second, you'll get more light as well as details. Anything above will beat the optical image stabilization if you don't use a tripod, and pretty much destroy your image. Video is also tricky, but the main things mentioned above are also valid. However, they're less visible. And, before you comment, this is not the same footage, and, due to the different perspectives of the two cameras, while shooting, the Lumia 925 failed to focus, which was really our own mistake, things which happen when you shoot with different cameras simultaneously. Check out the samples for yourselves. Hey everyone, this is Tony from Pocketnow, and we are in the same place, but it's a different side of the park. We are checking out the Sony Xperia Z1 and putting it against the Nokia Lumia 925. We are recording HD video, which is full HD. The Xperia Z1 just lagged a bit for a second there, but hope it's just on the screen and not in the final video. We're gonna go against the sun here. People walking by. Let's see how these two cope with changing lighting conditions. And we'll try to move in for a close-up on the leaves here on the ground. Stand there a bit just to see if they both manage to cope. There and back again, and there's some movement action, and get back to where we started from. Thank you very much for watching. See you in the next video. Hey everyone, this is Tony from Pocketnow, and we are in the same place, but it's a different side of the park. We are checking out the Sony Xperia Z1 and putting it against the Nokia Lumia 925. We are recording HD video, which is full HD. The Xperia Z1 just lagged a bit for a second there, but hope it's just on the screen and not in the final video. We're gonna go against the sun here. People walking by. Let's see how these two cope with changing lighting conditions. And we'll try to move in for a close-up on the leaves here on the ground. Stand there a bit just to see if they both manage to cope. There and back again, and there's some movement action, and get back to where we started from. Thank you very much for watching. See you in the next video. Okay, time for a conclusion, which is now the hardest thing to do. If you're a fan of Android or Windows Phone, there's little chance anybody can convince you of the contrary. However, if you're looking for your first phone, you have to first do some research on what these two ecosystems have to offer, not as a whole, but for you and your own needs, regardless of what we or anyone else tells you. Their different designs is what can help you make a decision. Then there comes the camera, which in our opinion goes to the 925, even if by a very small margin. However, if water and dust proofing are something you'd need, just grab the Z1 among the two. This was definitely one of the most interesting and exciting comparisons we've had the pleasure of ever creating. Folks, that's gonna do it for today for our Sony Xperia Z1 versus Nokia Lumia 925 comparison. If you like this video, please give us a thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe to social media channels because our full review of the Sony Xperia Z1 is coming. And of course, you can follow me on Facebook as well as on Twitter. Till next time, as usual, thank you very much for watching and stay safe.